Well, happy Sabbath. I want to thank all of you. The pastor wants us to get up and speak more often. The fear is that he's chosen to do that. And as you know, I like to do more current events and how that works with the prophecies that we got in the Bible. And basically, just to re-show all of us where we are in time's history and how close it is for the Lord to come back. And today our sermon is going to be over Brexit, which is a funny word to me because I thought that was like mix of Britain and exit, but that's not actually what that is. But you guys filled out surveys for other topics, and we're going to get into those too because there's more to it than just current events. There's just getting deeper into the Bible. But this was one of those suggestions, and this just happened a couple of weeks ago, and there's a lot of confusion about what it is, what's the significance of it, and how should we look at it and how should we treat it. So, this is basically what this sermon is going to be about. We're going to go through the time prophecy, the prophecy that actually has to deal with this. And then I'm going to read from Wikipedia, because you can get a lot of information from Wikipedia, what led up to this event called Brexit and what the significance of it is and what's going to be the future, the impact of that, and then what's coming after it. And go ahead and turn in your Bibles to Daniel 2. We're going to read verses 25 through 47. And while you turn to those scriptures, what's happening is Nebuchadnezzar has taken Israel into captivity. He's had a dream, but he can't remember the dream. So he asks his wise men to first tell him what that dream is, and then to interpret it, the meaning of the dream. And of course, they can't do it. And so finally, word gets back to Daniel, and Daniel's like, why didn't he invite us to come? Because they weren't invited. So he prays all night and then comes before the king. And that's where we're going to start here today with this. So this is Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel, and now he's about to interpret the dream. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and start reading Daniel 2, 25 through 47. Arioch, is that his name? Arioch? Arioch. Okay. Took Daniel to the king at once and said, I have found a man among the exiles from Judah who can tell the king what his dream means. The king asked Daniel, also Belteshazzar, are you able to tell me what I saw in my dream and interpret it? Daniel replied, no wise man, enchanter, magician, or diviner can explain to the king the mystery he has asked about, but there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in days to come. Your dream and the visions that passed through your mind are as you were lying in bed are these. Now pay attention to, there's a few things I want you to pay attention to. As your majesty was lying there, your mind turned to things to come, and the revealer of mystery showed you what is going to happen. As for me, this mystery has been revealed to me, not because I have greater wisdom than anyone else alive, but so that your majesty may know the interpretation and that you may understand what went through your mind. Your majesty looked, and there before you stood a large statue, an enormous, dazzling statue, awesome in appearance. The head of the statue was made of pure gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly baked clay. While you were watching, a rock was cut out, but not by human hands. It struck the statue of his feet of iron and clay and smashed them. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were all broken to pieces and became like chaff on the threshing floor in the summer. The wind swept them away without leaving a trace. But the rock that struck the statue became a huge mountain and filled the whole earth. This was the dream, and now we will interpret to the king. Your Majesty, you are the King of kings. The God of heaven has given you dominion and power and might and glory in your hands, as he has placed all mankind and the beasts of the field and the birds in the sky. Wherever they live, he has made you ruler over them all. You are that head of gold. After you, another kingdom will arise, inferior to yours. Next, a third kingdom, one of bronze, will rule over the whole earth. Finally, there will be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, for iron breaks and smashes everything. And as iron breaks things to pieces, it will crush and break all the others. Just as you saw that the feet and toes were partly baked clay and partly of iron, so this will be a divided kingdom. Yet it will have some of the strength of iron in it, even as you saw iron mixed with clay. As the toes were partly iron and clay, this kingdom will be partly strong and partly brittle. And just as you saw the iron mixed with baked clay, so the people will be a mixture and will not remain united any more than iron mixes with clay. Take note of that. In the time of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, nor will it be left to another people. It will crush all those kingdoms and bring them to an end, but it will itself endure forever. This is the meaning of the vision of the rock out of the mountain, but not by human hands, a rock that broke the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold to pieces. The great God has shown the king what will take place in the future. The dream is true, and the interpretation is trustworthy. Then Nebuchadnezzar fell prostrate before Daniel and paid him honor in order that an offering and incense be presented to him. The king said to Daniel, "Surely your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries, for you were able to reveal this mystery." Okay. I am very quickly just going to hit at this prophecy as far as the kingdoms, because you could do whole seminars over this, because this is a very deep and profound prophecy. So I'm going to go through it, but where we're going to spend most of our time today is in the last part. So we're going to start with the gold head. This section represented the entire empire of Babylon, of which Nebuchadnezzar was king. Okay, so I got maps here to just try to illustrate what's happening here. At the time of the Babylonian Empire, when it was at its greatest, as you can see at the top, you see Turkey. And I want you to remember Turkey, and right to the left of that is Greece, because that's going to help you keep in context where we are in this map, on these maps. You have Turkey, then you have Iraq, Iran over here to the right, Egypt down here on the left, on the bottom, and then you just have this area. This was the breadth of the Babylonian Empire. And it says it stretched from 606 to 536 BC. All right? So that was Babylon. That was the head of gold. That was Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom. All right. Then it says in this prophecy that they will be taken over by another kingdom. And that kingdom was the Persians and the Middle Persians, which was actually, if you read and study, was two different countries, but they were united. And that's why you have the arms. There were two different countries. The silver chest with two arms signified the empire of the Medes and Persians, which conquered and supplanted Babylon. So now, as you can see, Turkey and Greece at the top, just to keep in context, it's about the same area, but it's a little bit more expanded, more out here in Afghanistan so it actually wasn't that much bigger, but it was actually a little bigger than the one before it. Then, after the Medo-Persians, there was another country that took over them, which was Greece. And this section represented the Greco-Macedonian empire of Alexander the Great, which swallowed up Persia. And so, as you can see, if you're going to notice that this part of the world was probably the axis of power throughout time. Like, yeah, America existed, Australia, those continents, all those places existed, but the power of the world has always been represented in this area, because this is really was a central place on earth where all the populations congregated. Europe, and then like Asia and the Middle East, and then obviously Africa with Egypt and those major countries. All right. Then after Greece, there was the Roman Empire, which was the biggest, strongest empire of all these four. And like I said, they were stronger, but they were of less importance as far as the scripture. Like I said, if you read this and study this prophecy, it is profound. The two legs of iron represent the Roman Empire after Alexander's death. His Hellenistic empire continued in a divided form until its divisions were taken over by Rome. The two legs apparently signified the east and west divisions that characterized the late Roman Empire. And as you know, this was a time of Jesus. He came during this period in our history. All right, like I said, I'm going through this very, very quickly because we don't have time to go through it properly. But also Revelation is a lot where you can get a lot of more interpretation of this. But we go into the feet, which is the iron and clay, and feet and toes. And it says, extending from the legs are feet and toes of iron mixed with clay, a brittle and unstable mixture because it would not bond well. These represent the final phase of the Roman Empire, which will be made up of 10 kings, some strong, some weak. After, basically the Roman Empire was invaded, and it broke off into 10 different pieces. If my memory serves me correct, 3 of those pieces were actually conquered, and which is when you get into the other prophecies, which is connected to this. But it actually extends further than that. When it's talking about it's not going to bond well, and what they're talking about is, and it's actually found in the Bible. I thought I read it here, but I don't know if it's here or not. But it talks about the men would try to through the seas of men, they would try to bring all this back together. And what the Bible is talking about is during the medieval times, the kings and the rulers of all these countries, and remember, find Greece. Greece is here. That's Italy, and that's where I was telling you to kind of keep on the map where we're at, because Turkey is like there where it says Asia, Galatia, right there below the Black Sea. What you're seeing now is Europe involved into this picture, and all the rulers of all these kingdoms were trying to intermarry one another for various different reasons. But it didn't work. Like Satan's behind the scenes trying to put this thing back together. Because see, if he can bring everything back together, he can create this one unified kingdom, one religion, one currency, one economy, one everything, where he can oppress God's people because he has everyone working together against God's people. But God said it's not going to happen. And so this is where I'm going to start giving some facts from Wikipedia about royal intermarriage. It is funny that if you look at the royal family tree, they're all related, every one of them. And if you go online, just type in Google medieval royal family tree, and you're going to see diagram after diagram after diagram that look like this. Like looks like this of these family trees. Now you can't see the specifics because it's too far away, but the point is they're all connected, all these different kingdoms, and these are just 2 different branches of the tree. You can't see it, but King Henry's on this tree, the Queen, that sort of thing. And they're all interconnected because they were marrying one another to do different things. Now, let me read it. The royal intermarriage is the practice of members of ruling dynasties marrying into reigning families. It was more commonly done in the past as part of a strategic diplomacy for natural interests. Although sometimes enforced by a legal requirement on persons of royal birth, more often it has been a matter of political policy and or tradition in monarchies. And I'm skipping through just trying to find some good points because even these subjects have really in-depth information. Marriage between dynasties could serve to initiate, reinforce, or guarantee peace between nations. Alternatively, kinship by marriage could secure an alliance between 2 dynasties which sought to reduce the sense of threat from or to initiate aggression against the realm of a 3rd dynasty. It could also enhance the prospect of territorial acquisition for a dynasty by procuring legal claim to a foreign throne, portions, or of its realm through inheritance from an heiress whenever a monarch failed to leave an undisputed male heir. All right, so they're using marriage to basically secure peace or to set war on other countries is basically what they're saying, or to get new lands or the control of lands, and with the backdrop that, remember, there's the papacy is actually playing a role in all this as well, trying to use those medieval tactics to control kingdoms and kings and control their kingdoms. But the result of that was inbreeding, as you probably already know. Over time, because of relatively limited number of potential consorts, the gene pool of many ruling families grew progressively smaller until all of European royalty was related. This also resulted in many being descended from a certain person through many lines of descent, such as the numerous European royalty and nobility descended from Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom, or King and Christian Christian IV of Denmark. The House of Habsburg, which is this house on the left I have up here, was infamous for inbreeding, with the Habsburg lip cited as an ill effect, although no genetic evidence has proved the allegation. And then there's just more information about that. So basically, this attempt, had sermons about the same type of this new world order that you keep hearing about. This attempt to bring everything under one umbrella Satan tried to do it through intermarriage between the royal houses of Europe. And it actually happens in other countries like China and all these other countries, but this was probably the most notable one where all the royal families are trying to come together. All right. So, it doesn't work. So what is the next step in the process? Well, if Satan can't accomplish it through intermarriage, he decided he'd try to do it through war. And what you see, actually, let me go back. What you see here is, I got these out of order, really, actually. Okay, what you see here, there were several attempts by several conquerors, but the one that we all know about is Hitler. Hitler tried to basically take over the world. Basically, that's what he was actually trying to do. He was trying to exterminate the Jews, but he was also trying to bring everyone under one umbrella, again, underneath German rule. And everything you see in red, remember, Greece and Turkey is right here in the center. That's at the height of their power. That's what they were basically controlling before everything fell apart on them. And so, but did it work? No. God said it was not going to work. And so what you see here is right before this happened, there was an attempt to bring it through diplomatic strategy. And this was the League of Nations. Anybody heard of the League of Nations before? This was the precursor to the United Nations. Let me quickly read what that is right quick. The League of Nations was an intergovernmental organization founded on January 10, 1920 as a result of the Paris Peace Conference that ended the First World War. It was the first international organization whose principal mission was to maintain peace. Its primary goals, as stated in its covenant, included preventing wars through collective security and disarmament and settling international disputes through negotiation and arbitration and other things. Didn't work. Basically, they were incapable of preventing aggression by the Axis powers in the 1930s. Germany withdrew from the League, as did Japan, Italy, Spain, and others. Basically, you have all these nations coming together, and some of those people came out of the League of Nations and raised World War II on the world. So it didn't work. So afterwards, the United Nations was founded, which was a second attempt to do the same thing. And as you know, the United Nations exists today. So, and it's got similar goals. It's a replacement for the ineffective League of Nations. The organization was established on October 24th, 1945, after World War II, in order to prevent another such conflict, which is World War II. At its founding, the UN had 51 members. Now there's 193. So this one would be a lot more successful, except they're still having problems. Since its founding, there have been many calls for reform of the United Nations, but little consensus on how to do so. Some want the UN to play a greater and more effective role in world affairs, while others want its role reduced to humanitarian work. Have also been numerous calls for the UN Security Council's membership to be increased for different ways of electing the UN, and a lot of information here. Critics have also accused the UN of bureaucratic inefficiencies, waste, and corruption. For time purposes, I'm not going to read the rest of that, but basically what they're saying is they brought all these nations together, but they're still in conflict. Is the world at peace right now? No. That's what the United Nations is supposed to be about in just this very basic form. Bringing peace back to the world by bringing all the heads of the nations together to work through its problems. It's not working. So that leads up to the European Union. What is the European Union? This is what's connected to Brexit, or the Great Britain leaving the European Union. And let me read quickly what that is. The European Union is a political, economic union of 28 member states that are located primarily in Europe. It has an area, it's a big area, and its estimated population of over 508 million. The EU has developed an internal single market through a standardized system of laws that apply in all member states. EU policies aim to ensure that the free movement of people, goods, services, and capital within the internal market, enact legislation in justice and home affairs, and maintain common policies on trade, agriculture, fisheries, and regional development. The monetary union was established in 1999 and came into full force in 2002, and is composed of 19 EU member states which use the euro currency, which is the euro. Okay, if you look on this map, you'll see the yellow, the orange, and the green. The green are countries that aren't actually a part of the EU, but they still work kind of with them, right? Like Switzerland and Norway and Iceland at the top, they're actually not a part of the actual membership of the EU, but they try to work with them. It's a very complicated situation. Britain, for years, even when they joined, have been talking about leaving the EU, and basically the EU is a very small idea of what they would like for the whole world to be. If that gives you an idea of what it is. Their economy, their religions, let me find it here. Their debt, the banks that are within the EU, their working visas, the ability to cross into other countries without having to have a passport, property ownership, immigration, and basically their relationships with one another are all at play in the EU. Well, what happened a couple of weeks ago is that Britain had a referendum, and they voted to leave the EU, which will have significant, impactful consequences, because they're still trying to figure all this out. So don't think if you don't understand. There's a lot of people who don't understand what's going to happen. A lot of things can happen. But basically, they withdrew from the EU, and then there is a political goal that has been pursued by various individuals, advocacy groups, and political parties from across the political spectrum since the United Kingdom joined in 1973 to the precursor, I think there was a precursor to the EU. Withdrawal from the European Union has been a right of every member state since 2007. It is often referred to as Brexit, or in the early usage, Brexit. Both words derived from the analogy of Grexit. So it's not that combining what I thought it was, a Britain and exit. It's just that's the term they had already had in place. In 2016, a referendum was held on the country's membership of the EU. This referendum was arranged by Parliament when it passed the European Union Referendum Act of 2015. The result was 52% in favor of leaving and 48% in favor of remaining, with a turnout of 72% of its electorate. All right. See if I can simplify this. There are issues right now. The relationships in the EU are strained, and I'm going to explain why they're strained. When Britain left, it's causing a domino effect. And remember, this is a world economy. What happens over there affects us over here, and affects China, and affects Russia, and affects everyone else. And a lot of people are afraid right now. The stock market plunged the day after or whatever. And literally right after that, there's three other countries that they have to make a decision if they want to leave as well. And I think those countries were Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Gibraltar. I don't know what country that is. But they have to make a decision, do they want to stay? The relationship between the EU members is strained already. Now they've got to deal with this. And the particular issue of why it's strained, it's got to do with immigration. The Middle East is in war. Basically, the whole Middle East is at war right now. So there's immigrants leaving the Middle East, coming from Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Syria, dealing with ISIS, and they're all flocking towards Europe, to the European Union. But with them has come the terrorist attacks, all those things that we see on the news. And so a lot of them like to go to Britain for whatever reason. A lot of them are just migrating to Britain. And Britain, I'm not going to say ignorance, but the hope was for a lot of people was that if they left the EU, their borders would close and the immigrants couldn't come in. That's not true. In fact, Google actually said the most searched terms after the exit was, what is Brexit? By Great Britain. Most people voted on something they didn't even know what they were voting on. They just went with the crowd, what was being said. So now, let me read the immigration. The Conservative MEP representing South East England, Daniel Hannan, predicted on BBC Newsnight that the level of immigration will remain high after Brexit. Frankly, if people watching think that they have voted and there is now going to be zero immigration from the EU, because also it's not just immigration from the Middle East, it's other countries in the EU migrating into Britain, they're going to be disappointed. You will look in vain for anything that the Leave campaign said at any point that ever suggested there would be any kind of border closure or drawing up of the drawbridge. So these people, they left the EU thinking that this was going to help solve this immigration problem, and it's not. So now you can see this is going to become a very contentious situation. The economic effects is such as I was saying, they're all connected. They're all using the euro, except for Britain, who uses the pound, Britain has always been that country that they were in, but they were wanting to get out. You know what I'm saying? So they already had a strained relationship to begin with. That's why they want to be separate. And now they got what they want. But now the other countries are there's a lot of people in the EU very hostile towards the Britain leaders and stuff. They're very hostile. I mean, I watched the video where he was asking the guy, why are you even here at the actual meeting? He's like, why are you here? Y'all left. And they're getting very heated. And so, I mean, it's like I said, there's more to it. They've connected all these things, and now it's falling apart. And other countries may be tempted to leave as well. Well, think about it. If you were a Britain citizen and you lived in France and you own property in France, what's going to happen? Are you going to now have to sell your property, or are you going to have to go get a passport because now you're not part of the European Union? These are the kind of questions that they've got to figure out and solve, because they don't know how this is all going to work out. So that's basically what this event happened. So what is the significance of it spiritually? What did God say over and over? What did he say? He said it's not going to happen. We're not going to be able to bring all these countries together economically, through war, through whatever means we want to do. Man is trying to do what God said we cannot do. And it's not going to happen, and it's not happening. Right now, it's just to watch and see what happens with the European Union. It could very well fall apart behind this event, which just further signifies where we are in time, because he said it wasn't going to happen. So, in this prophecy, what was the next thing that happened after the feet and toes of iron and clay? There was a rock that was carved out without hands, and it smashes the statue. What is that signifying? Who is this rock that is being mentioned here? I'm going to read from Luke 20, verse 17. And he beheld them and said, What is this then that is written? The stone which the builders rejected, the same is become the head of the corner. And I'm going to read from Romans 9:39 and 33. As it is written, behold, I lay on Zion a stumbling stone, or in a rock of offense, and whosoever believeth on him shall not be ashamed. And finally, Matthew 21:44. There's a lot of verses that say the same type of thing. And whosoever shall fall on this stone, it shall be broken. But whomsoever it shall fall, it will grind him to powder. The prophecy is saying that Christ is going to put an end to all this confusion, all these attempts of Satan trying to unify this world to persecute his people. The time of the end is upon us. It's what this prophecy is literally saying to us. And this is just another event to further fulfill that prophecy. Jesus is that rock. He's going to come back, and it's soon. He's going to take his people home, and we'll have an end to this conflict. Very quickly, I just went through a time prophecy that, like I said, you can do a whole sermon on. It's very profound.
I was over there at the Big Four Conference. I was a guard there. And then the four biggest nations came together, and they was going to decide how they was going to make this work. It didn't work.
It didn't work.
They stayed in there and talked for about 4 days, 4 weeks, and they achieved nothing.
Nothing.
Then they left out there with machine guns and airplanes and everything. It was all a kind of a joke. And they told us, don't make a sudden move because you'll cause somebody to get shot.
Yep.
We just had to stay there and watch them.
That's the point. Like, it's actually kind of comical to see, like, God's our parent, and he's telling you, you're not going to do this, but we're going to try to do it anyway, and it's not going to work, no matter what they do. And you remember the royal families, them trying to intermarry? You know this New World Order thing you keep hearing about? They're behind that. That's the method that which they're trying to redo it in this day and age. That is like stuff is all connected. Like they're trying to bring all these unified the one currency, because they're already talking about Bitcoin in the EU now. They're talking about maybe we should go to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is an electronic currency, if you don't know what that is, where basically everyone in the world uses one currency as electronic, and if you think that through, in the time of the end, if there's one currency and it's electric, they can cut you off from it like that. Nothing you can do about it. So that's the type of stuff that can happen when you bring everybody together. If you have one religion and you don't obey that religion, then now what does that make you? That makes you a malcontent. It makes you a terrorist. It makes you a threat to the union, which what are they going to do to you? They're going to kill you and prosecute you, put you in jail, all the things we've heard about. Because if you don't go by what everybody else is going by, then you're different and you're trying to buck the system. That's the type of stuff that can happen if you bring one of all things in the world. I mean, it's very complex. That's what they're trying to do. But God said it's not going to happen no matter what they try. And so basically, Daniel's prophecy is just further being fulfilled by this event. I would imagine in the next couple of years, you're going to see profound changes to the EU. It's just not going to work. People are people. They clash. It just isn't going to happen. One country wants to do this. One country wants to do that. They're not going to work together. So that's the sermon. Like I said, I wanted to do this sermon because it just happened, just like a couple of weeks ago. And, you know, we are to be watchful and diligent in these last days. We need to know what's happening. What are the significant steps that are happening so we know where we're at? We know the urgency in fulfilling God's mission for us, which is to spread the gospel. And if we're putting our head in the sand and we're not watching, we're not thinking about it, we're not caring, it's going to sneak up on all of us and you're going to get caught in the wave, and that's going to be it. We need to know what's happening, and that just happened. And although in the big scope of things, it's a very small thing, it's a very significant thing because it just further proves what we've already been shown to be the truth. They will not be able to cleave together, and they won't. All right, let's have a word of prayer. Lord, thank you for revealing mysteries to us, for showing us the future, for preparing us for tough times ahead, times that we will be made to depend upon you for everything. And Lord, we just ask that you continue to train us, to teach us, to trust you, to obey you, to do what we need to do when we don't even understand what's happening to us. And Lord, we just want to say we thank you and we love you for everything that you do for us. And just thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.